This is CBN News Watch.
And thank you so much for joining us. I'm Ephraim Graham. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is in Saudi Arabia today. The nation's top diplomat arrived to meet with the royal family about missing Washington Post columnist Jamal Khashoggi. President Donald Trump sent Pompeo after calling the king on Monday.
The king firmly denied any knowledge of it. He didn't really know. Maybe, I don't want to get into his mind, but it sounded to me like maybe these could have been rogue killers. Who knows?
Turkish leaders claim they have evidence the Saudis interrogated, tortured, and then murdered Khashoggi. The journalist is a Saudi citizen and used to be an insider with the royal family, but he became a critic and exiled himself to the United States. CBN's senior international correspondent George Thomas is here now to talk more about this. So, George, as Secretary Pompeo is meeting in Saudi Arabia with King Salman, Turkey's president adds a new twist to the case. What are the details here?
Yeah, basically he told a Turkish pro-government Turkish newspaper that when authorities went in this morning, Turkish authorities went into the Saudi consulate, they noticed that the consulate got some fresh paint in recent days. And the allegation there is that the Saudis are trying to cover up a murder. In fact, this is a quote that President Erdogan gave to the Turkish newspaper. He says, "My hope is that we can reach conclusions that will give us reasonable opinion as soon as possible, because the investigation is looking into many things, such as toxic materials, and those materials being removed by painting them over." And so this is an interesting charge that the Turkish government is levying against the Saudi government.
Yeah, some are saying that the Saudi authorities may acknowledge Khashoggi was killed in a botched interrogation. What are the details of that claim?
Yeah, I mean, I think the narrative that is emerging today is that a senior level member of the Saudi intelligence community was dispatched to Turkey on the at the behest of the Crown Prince, in essence, to interrogate and to get information from him, and that this particular agent went rogue and in the process ended up murdering Khashoggi. We don't know that, at least that is the narrative that is coming out in a way to try and distance this event from the royal family. And this idea that the royal, at the highest level of the royal family, that the message was sent out for this journalist to be killed.
Now, we know that Senator Lindsey Graham is a strong supporter of Saudi Arabia, but he came out swinging against the Crown Prince. What can you tell us about what he said?
Yeah, he sure did. I mean, Lindsey Graham has been a strong supporter of Saudi Arabia, but just today he said that the Crown Prince has to go. He called Ben Salman a wrecking ball, and in essence said that he will not go visit Saudi Arabia as long as the Crown Prince is in charge, and basically said to the royal family that there are others you can choose from, and that this particular Crown Prince cannot be a world leader on the world stage. Very, very strong statements from him, and said that he would push the Senate to put tough sanctions on Saudi Arabia.
Hearing that, what do you think this will do to U.S.-Saudi relations?
I mean, clearly we are at a strained point where this goes. Secretary Pompeo is on his way back from Riyadh. What message he brings from the House of Saud in the next few hours, we will see in terms of the narrative coming out from the royal kingdom. That is going to make a huge impact on where this goes in the next 24 to 72 hours. But clearly this has created tensions between our two countries. We need the Saudis. They are an important player in the Middle East, and our relations, we've had a long relation with the House of Saud that dates back a long time. And for anything to happen in that relationship could be quite dangerous for the region.
If we widen the conversation a bit,
Sure.
What do you think this is going to mean more broadly for the Middle East?
Well, I mean, there are certain actors in the region that would like to see a rift grow between the United States and Saudi Arabia, principally Iran. As you know, Saudi Arabia and the United States have been trying to checkmate Iran's influence in the broader Middle East, whether it's in Yemen, in Iraq, in Syria. Saudi Arabia has played an instrumental role in pushing back the influence of Iran in Syria and in Iraq. And sure, there are forces in the Middle East that would like to see a wedge between the United States and Saudi Arabia. And so the outcome of this could be quite serious, and what it means for the broader Middle East, because we've got major conflicts still going on in the region that needs the United States and Saudi Arabia to be on the same page.
Now, some have been critical of the president and the way he's handled this. Do you think this in any way will be a dark cloud over his presidency?
No. Not at all. I mean, again, I think you have to wait and see and hear what Secretary of State Pompeo brings back from Saudi Arabia. But clearly, the next 24, 72 hours are going to be critical.
We'll be watching. Thanks a lot, George. Much appreciated.
Sure.
America's debt is on the rise. The Office of Management and Budget reports the federal deficit grew 17% in fiscal year 2018. The gap between federal income and spending expanded to $779 billion. Higher defense spending, increases in Medicaid, Social Security, and disaster relief all contributed to this increase. The deficit is growing even as the government collected a record level of income tax this year. The Treasury Department says American workers paid a history-making $1.7 trillion in taxes. A federal judge dismissed Stormy Daniels' defamation lawsuit against President Donald Trump, saying the president made a hyperbolic statement against a political adversary when he tweeted about a composite sketch the porn actress's attorney released. Daniels' real name, by the way, is Stephanie Clifford, and she sued the president in April. It came after he said a composite sketch of a man she said threatened her in 2011 to keep quiet about an alleged affair with the real estate mogul was, quote, a con job. In an order handed down Monday, a U.S. district judge said President Trump's statement was protected speech under the First Amendment. Abortion activists have created a plan that guarantees women access to abortion just in case Roe v. Wade is overturned by the now conservatively U.S. Supreme Court. Mark Martin joins us now with more on this story. Mark?
Yeah, from Planned Parenthood Action has announced its new Care for All plan. Now, it explains, quote, there are 13 abortion-related cases that are just one step away from the Supreme Court. And, quote, 20 states are poised to ban abortion should Roe v. Wade be overturned. A Planned Parenthood document explaining the plan says the organization has been working on the plan, saying, quote, since before Trump and Pence took office. The document goes on to say, with the confirmation of Justice Brett Kavanaugh, we are kicking our plan into high gear. This multi-million-dollar nationwide effort will be working to ensure that abortion is still accessible in the United States, no matter what happens at the Supreme Court, end quote. The plan has been called an abortion underground railroad by a writer with Salon.com. That article says the abortion activists believe Roe will be overturned in the next 2 years. Planned Parenthood's Care for All plan is set up in 3 parts. Take a look. Expand services in states where abortion is likely to remain legal and accessible. Partner with state advocates and coalition partners, and fight abortion restrictions at their source. Meanwhile, Planned Parenthood clinic director turned pro-life activist Abby Johnson spoke with CBN News on the set of a new film depicting her life. The film shows her emotional decision to quit after watching an abortion via ultrasound. Johnson spoke about the spiritual warfare involved in the battle over abortion.
Warfare in our home, in our marriage, with our family, and certainly with various pro-life projects that I'm a part of, and certainly this film.
Now back to Planned Parenthood's new Care for All plan. The concluding paragraph reads, we will never back down, and today we are fighting for all of our rights and freedoms. No matter what Donald Trump, Mike Pence, or Brett Kavanaugh may say, each of us deserves the right to control our own bodies, including the right to decide if and when to become a parent. Ephraim?
What are pro-life leaders saying about this new plan?
Well, I went to lifesitenews.com, and it was mostly informational, again, kind of like what we're doing here, laying out the basics of the plan. But I'm sure as it gets more publicity, we're going to see many pro-life leaders speaking out in opposition to it.
And you can count on us to cover it. Thanks a lot, Mark. Search and rescue efforts are still underway in Florida, with some news agencies reporting 1,000 or more people still missing in the Florida Panhandle. Many residents still have no power, running water, or food. That is the case in the community of St. Andrews, where Operation Blessing is there right now to help them.
With 155-mile-per-hour winds that snap trees like twigs and blew roofs off homes, Hurricane Michael's fierce lashing of Florida has left a mark that will not go away soon.
We really need tarps and help with fixing roofs, removing trees out of yards, because you got a lot of people going around trying to scam the elderly and charging what they shouldn't and getting a check ahead of time and not coming to do the work. $5,000 just to cut a tree down.
We're here in the historic area known as St. Andrews, nearly 1 week after Hurricane Michael pummeled the Panhandle of Florida. And people in this community are still desperate for help. They have no running water, they have no electricity, and most have no way to get to food distributions at local churches. So residents were thrilled when volunteers from Operation Blessing came to them. Every morning, volunteers gather at Lighthouse Church in Panama City Beach to coordinate teams and minister to the community.
To spread the love of Jesus out to all those that are hurting in our community. We are the church. We are God's hands and feet. Let them know that help is on the way.
Without electricity, people are hot and hungry. And with few gas stations open, it's hard to get around.
I love it, and thank y'all so much. I appreciate it.
Jacqueline Gaynor lives alone and has cancer, yet she perseveres through her trust in God.
Well, it's hard, it's rough, but I keep the faith and keep trying to move on. Then I know what he can do and what he will do. And I just ask him, I ask not greedy, but needed, because other people around here is in bad shape too.
And the Operation Blessing volunteers will not be forgotten.
They're angels. That's all I can say, they're angels.
It's very overwhelming. Lots of people in tears. They're grateful. We did a lot of praying for people, not just handing them essentials, but also praying with them. It meant a lot to them.
Volunteers are thrilled to partner with Operation Blessing to help ease the suffering during a time of such overwhelming need.
That you guys have been wonderful. You've been a huge blessing. We had multiple families today that were shouting at us, wearing our shirts. God bless you. Thank you, Operation Blessing. They were screaming Operation Blessing, and it brought tears to our eyes.
A 9-year-old Texas girl is in critical condition, and she's getting national attention as her parents fight for her life. She is Peyton Summons, and her family won a 1-week stay to keep her on life support while they find a facility to treat her. Cook's Children's Hospital's doctors say she is brain dead and should be removed from life support. They've started a GoFundMe campaign to help with medical expenses, and even donors are calling for prayer. And the Peyton family, you can find the full story at cbnnews.com. Coming up, a retired pastor asked to lead a Bible study at his apartment complex is told he can't. We have the latest in his battle to study God's Word in his very own home. Retired Minister Ken Hague, along with support from First Liberty, is fighting for his right to hold a Bible study at his senior living community. He was asked to start the group by other residents. Many of them aren't able to go to church anymore, and they relied on the Bible study to help them. It grew so much, though, at one point that they asked to use a community room. Permission was granted to do that, but later they were told they couldn't hold the Bible study there. Hague was also told by management that they could be evicted if they even held that study inside their apartment.
For my wife and I, it's sort of like resting in the eye of a hurricane. In the eye of the hurricane, it's peaceful and quiet. Just don't get up against the walls.
And here now is his attorney, Jeremy Dyes, with First Liberty. So, Jeremy, thank you so much for joining us. Where do things stand right now for this pastor?
Well, right now, he's had to end his Bible study for the foreseeable future until we can resolve this with the Housing and Urban Development, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, where we filed a complaint because it's patently illegal for an organization like the Evergreens at Smith Commons there to deny someone the right to be able to use the community room for a Bible study. In fact, they wanted him to call it a book review rather than a Bible study. But beyond that, to say that he cannot even use his own apartment or someone's apartment there on campus to host a Bible study amongst friends, I mean, they shouldn't be telling anyone what they can and cannot talk about in their own apartments, let alone a Bible study. And so we are hoping that Secretary Ben Carson, once he finds out about this case and reviews the complaint that we've made with HUD, that they'll investigate this and resolve this matter.
In light of who is running housing and urban development, Dr. Ben Carson, as you mentioned, we know that he's an outspoken Christian. Are you expecting favorable action?
Well, we certainly hope so. What we've seen right now is that the management company at this senior center, this retirement community, is acting unlawfully and frankly unconstitutionally. They're telling the residents that they can't study the Bible in their own apartment. That is a classic definition of religious discrimination in housing. And so we've made that complaint to HUD and asked them to investigate that. And I hope that they will do so from top to bottom. Sadly, it's not the first time we've seen this. We represent Donna Dunbar down in Port Charlotte as well, another senior center there, where she was told she could not use her community room to study the scriptures as well. That's incorrect and that's unlawful. And so we're making sure that HUD is aware of these repeated instances of religious discrimination, these violations of the Constitution, and giving Secretary Carson every chance he can to review them and to correct them.
This just seems so odd. I visit community centers myself where we do hold Bible studies. Why are these community centers doing this?
That's a great question for the community centers themselves. The only answer I can provide to you is that either they don't know what the law is, which is concerning on a significant level, or they know what the law is and they just simply want to engage in discrimination anyway. But either way you look at it, it's both shameful and illegal for companies like this who run these senior centers to tell elderly residents, Ken and his wife are 80 plus years old, and to threaten them with the possibility of putting them out on the street through eviction for hosting a Bible study in their apartment. That's incorrect. Not only is it incorrect, it's unlawful and it violates the Constitution and it must stop.
Have they given any legal justification for their action? Doesn't sound like they understand what religious liberty is.
I don't know what kind of justification they could possibly provide for violating the First Amendment rights of our clients and violating the law so flagrantly here. What we know is that we've sent them a demand letter, asked them to communicate with us. They have not responded to that demand letter. That left us with no other choice but to file a complaint with HUD and ask them to review this situation. But I want to let everybody listening today know that they can be a part of this as well. Go to firstliberty.org, sign our petition to HUD and Secretary Carson that they'll be involved with this situation and correct it for seniors everywhere. No senior should face the prospect of eviction for simply hosting a Bible study in their apartment.
Any advice for others facing this sort of discrimination for their faith?
Absolutely. Number one, be faithful to it and make sure that you know what your rights are. You can learn those at firstliberty.org. And if this comes your way again, and I'm sad to say that it just very well may across this country of ours, if that does happen, call us at firstliberty.org. Let us help you out because no senior should face the possibility of eviction or any type of religious discrimination in housing in situations like this.
Now, you've talked to the Higgs. How are they in the midst of all of this?
Well, they're disappointed. I mean, in more than just the Haugies, what we have here is a number of residents at this center that can't even get out of their apartments for the week. They can't go to church. They're immobile. They're not able to be transported to a local church. And so this isn't very much their time to worship. And yet you have a management company that has simply dug in their heels and refused to accommodate residents and their spiritual needs. That is a tragic thing. And frankly, it's a shameful situation in which we find a management company acting illegally, stopping and preventing people from worshiping in their own homes.
Jeremy Dyes, firstliberty.org. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Still ahead, a movie detailing the gruesome practices of one abortion mill where the doctor was tried for murder may have surprised Hollywood in more than just one way. We've got the story. A movie about the horrors at a Philadelphia abortion clinic and the murder trial of an abortionist, Kermit Gosnell, finished strong at the box office for its opening weekend. However, producers faced obstacles making it, and even when the story first came out, the fact that Dr. Kermit Gosnell was on trial for killing babies born alive barely made headlines in the mainstream media. Here's CBN's Charlene Aaron with the story.
This groundbreaking movie highlights a true-life horror story that went almost ignored by politicians and the mainstream media. CBN News, however, followed the story from the crime scene to the courthouse.
You'd think a case about a medical doctor killing babies born alive would be a big news story, but what was also shocking about the trial of Kermit Gosnell was how little media attention it received. I was in the courtroom for CBN News covering the trial, just one of a handful of journalists in that courtroom.
You are not going to believe what I saw last night.
Starring Dean Cain as a detective, the PG-13 film explores the shocking crimes and trial of Kermit Gosnell, who received a life sentence for killing thousands of babies over 3 decades. The jury found Gosnell guilty of murdering 3 babies born alive. Producers Phelan McAleer and Ann McElhinney told CBN News of their uphill battle in making the film, which began with trying to raise money through the site Kickstarter.
We tell them our whole campaign and suddenly they're basically censoring us. They said, oh, you can't mention babies murdered. You can't mention babies stabbed to death. They didn't want to have anything to do with us.
The filmmakers also faced backlash from other sources. They blamed Planned Parenthood for a recently canceled screening of the film. Plus, numerous media outlets rejected ads for the movie.
We had NPR refusing to run our ads, refusing to run the ads. They wouldn't allow us to call Kermit Gosnell an abortion doctor. Facebook have rejected ad upon ad upon ad that we have put up.
Meanwhile, McElhinney points out similarities between the left's lack of outrage in the Gosnell case and Democrats' treatment of Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh, saying it just goes to show how far they will go to protect abortion.
I see a huge parallel here between what has happened to us and what happened to him. I don't know what that man would have had to do to have proved himself worthy to the Democrats. It's not about anything but about abortion. This is all about abortion.
Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
Coming up, see how one police department made a dream come true for a little boy facing a life-threatening disease. A 7-year-old cancer patient in Maine got a big surprise this week right before going for his final chemotherapy treatment. Members of his area sheriff's department showed up to give him a ride. Liam Silveria was diagnosed with an aggressive brain tumor about a year ago, but so far Liam is doing better than doctors predicted, and this week he got to live out a dream. He rode in the front seat of the cruiser with the lights and sirens on and even got to use the police radio. When asked how he's doing after his last treatment, Liam replied, "I'm doing awesome." Awesome indeed. Remember, you can get more of our exclusive coverage of the issues you care most about at cbnnews.com. We'd love to know what you think about the stories you've seen here today. You can do that by emailing newswatch@cbn.com. You can also reach out and talk to us on Facebook, on Twitter, as well as Instagram. Certainly hope you'll join us again right here next time. Have a wonderful Tuesday. We'll see you right back here tomorrow. Goodbye and God bless.